Hi, this is Kathy McBreen. I'm the president of Millionaire Corner, and I am excited today to talk with Liz Weston. Liz is one of the foremost journalists in the financial media today. She has been a part of a team that won a Pulitzer Prize. She's also a certified financial planner, which is unlike most journalists who are in this area. She really understands what she's talking about. Liz wrote a book called Your Credit Score, which was very, very popular and was a national bestseller. And now she's introducing a book called Deal with Your Debt. And we're really excited to have her. Liz has been on CNBC. She writes a weekly or monthly column for the Los Angeles Times. She's been on Dr. Phil, and she's been on the Today Show. So I'd really like to introduce you and welcome Liz Weston. I'm sort of like you from what I read in your book, that you're not really into brand name cars, and I'm not really either. But I remember my dad was taught when he was growing up, I guess, or when he was young, that every 3 years you got a new car because you were supposed to. I guess that was the way they sold the cars in the 60s. But then again, my dad never took on debt to buy a car. So talk a little bit about auto loans, and when does it make sense to get an auto loan, and when does it not?
Here's the deal. If you can pay cash for your cars, you can buy whatever you want. You can exchange them every 2 or 3 years. You have my blessing if you're paying cash. The problem is most people aren't. They're using loans, and they wind up overspending on cars. Back in the 60s and the 70s, the cars weren't that great. So maybe after 3 years, you were ready to turn them in. These days, cars can easily last 200,000 miles or more. I had one that was 265,000 miles when we finally got rid of it. It's still out there. It's lapped the odometer yet again. So there isn't the pressing need of obsolescence to get yourself another car. What you want to think about is exchanging cars every few years is a huge luxury, and it's costing you so much money. The most expensive time to own cars is in the first few years. Ideally, you'd let somebody else take that depreciation hit. You'd buy a gently used car and you'd hang on to it for at least 10 years. And I go through in my book, Deal with Your Debt, how much money that will save you. And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. This falling in love with cars and falling out of love with cars and exchanging them, it's one of the most expensive things people can do. And when I talk to people who are having trouble making ends meet, often, especially if they've cut everything else, they've spent too much on their housing, their shelter, their mortgage, their rent, whatever it is, or what's sitting in their driveway. Mm-hmm. And more I see people with 2 car payments in the family, spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month. And think about this. If you take your car payment and double it, that's about what your car is costing you every month. When you take into consideration depreciation, repairs, maintenance, all those other things. So those are very expensive hunks of machinery. You want to try to get a good deal and hang on to your cars as long as you can.
So what are the most important tips that you would give our listeners about managing their debt?
I think the most important tip to give people is to remember that debt isn't the only thing that they have going on in their financial life. They are almost certainly going to hit retirement age. They're almost certainly not going to be able to live on Social Security alone. So retirement has to be the top priority from day one. Even if you are desperate to get yourself out of debt, make sure you're saving something for retirement. Number 2 is to be realistic about your debt situation. I see so many people who are just struggling with debts that ultimately they can't pay. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're deeply in debt, I recommend 2 phone calls. One to a legitimate credit counselor. Those are the ones associated with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. And the other is to a bankruptcy attorney, because the credit counselors are going to try to steer you away from bankruptcy. The bankruptcy attorney can let you know what the advantages might be. And sometimes the best of bad options is just to hit the restart button. It's nothing that anybody really wants to do, but sometimes it's what really makes the most sense for a family situation. And finally, I'd say don't be in a rush to pay off the good debt. And by good debt, I mean debt that's helping you get ahead. Mortgages, federal student loans, business loans, if they're low rate, if they're affordable, that's not the debt you should be targeting. You should be targeting the toxic debt that's really not helping you get ahead, like credit card bills. Mm-hmm. So those are the things I'd like people to carry away, that there is a sensible approach to debt. Debt is not just a 4-letter word. It can actually help you get ahead if you manage it correctly.
Okay, great. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think that we should bring up or mention?
Well, we talked about the highlights, I think. I like to, hit that drum about retirement, because a lot of people get to, or a lot of people when they're thinking about retirement, think, well, I'll catch up later. And when I say that they can't, I'm discouraging a lot of 40 and 50-year-olds.
Yeah.
We need to get the message across to the 20 and 30 somethings that this is really important and they have to prioritize it. If somebody's 55 and hasn't saved for retirement, there's not a lot we can do to help them. But if somebody's 25 and hasn't gotten started, boy, we can really give them a head start in life. So that's what's important.
Your thoughts have been very helpful today, and we really believe our readers and our listeners will have learned a lot. Thank you so much for being with us today.